I've been asked a million times in my career, what's your favourite thing to cook? And I always thought that was quite a funny question to ask a chef. I don't really have a favourite thing to cook. It's kind of like asking a photographer what's his favourite thing to take a photograph of. Of course, it's a craft. It's about turning your hand to any kind of food and using your experience and also your creativity to make it happen. When I first travelled to South Korea, one of the first dishes I ate was what they call a bibimbap, a Dolsot Bibimbap. It's a rice dish, very specific to Korea, and it's baked in a very heavy granite bowl, and it says Korea to me all over. So I'll be cooking one of those today. So to start this bibimbap, I've done a little bit of vegetable prep. This is some daikon, which is basically a long Asian radish I've just chopped up. Some bean sprouts. I've got some shiitake mushrooms, some carrot, some bok choy, and I've just chopped up the stalks and the leaves separately, and some spring onions. Some beef, relatively lean beef, I've just shredded into quite fine. I have some rice which I've pre-steamed in the oven. The Dolsot Bibimbap specifically is made in a heavy granite bowl which I have in the oven here, preheated to 250 degrees. So I'm going to put in a little bit of sesame oil, work that around the side of the bowl so you can see how hot the bowl is. So then I'm going to take some of the rice, then I'm going to pop that back into the oven just to keep it warm. I'm going to add a little bit of fish sauce, a little bit of soy sauce, and some oil. If I was doing this at home, I would just lightly pan fry it. The story of how I became a chef is not particularly exciting, if I'm honest. I didn't have this wonderful moment of experience where I knew I was going to be a chef. I think it was more down to the fact that I didn't eat particularly exciting food growing up. And I think I always knew there was more out there. Of course, I'd see television shows with the likes of Floyd, and watching the food that he made, and I was interested in it. And then as I grew up a bit older, I wasn't particularly well behaved at school. I recall my head of year sitting me down and talking to me and asking me if I wanted to do a work experience for a couple of days a week. And then I ended up working in an old country house hotel close to where I lived in Gloucestershire in the Cotswolds. And yeah, and then when I got into the kitchen, started to understand, you know, how a team worked, the dedication, and saw the different foods that they were making. Then I was interested. Then I was pretty much hooked. I mean, then I realised how much I didn't know, and developed a love for the craft of cooking. It's a little bit of fish sauce on the mushrooms. I'll pop those into an oven, 180 with some humidity. And I don't want to cook them too much. I just want to cook them a little bit so that they're not raw. Same with these. I'm going to put these into steam just to take the rawness off them. There's two bulls on a hill, a father and a son, and the son says to the father, let's run down the hill and do one of those sheep. And the father says to the son, no son, let's walk down the hill and do them all. That's a silly anecdote that I saw once in a movie when I was in my early teens, but which I never forgot. And it had an effect on how I viewed my career. Once I got into the kitchens, I thought long and hard about how I was going to approach my career. Patience and hard work were was the way that I was going to do it. I was ambitious, but I was never so ambitious as some of the chefs I worked with that wanted to have a head chef position by the age of 25, and all I needed was natural progression and to enjoy my career, and that's what I did. And when I was in my 20s, I went to London. I ended up working in the canteen, Marco's Canteen in Chelsea Harbour, and it was a really tough job, and it taught me how hard kitchens were going to be. And from there I worked around London in all different restaurants. I was lucky enough to go to Cannes and work at the film festival. I went to Sydney, travelled a little bit around Australia and worked in some good places in Sydney. Then I was lucky enough to be part of the opening team for Soho House New York in downtown Manhattan. Being part of an opening team is quite a different experience as to starting work in a restaurant that's already established. You have to use your initiative. You have to make it work. I did that for a year or so. Then I came back to London, and then at the table before serving, you then start to mix it all up, which can be a bit messy if you're not careful. And of course the raw egg will go down into the rice, into the hot bowl, and start to cook. The chili paste starts to mix with the rice, and you just slowly and carefully mix it all together. Worked in some big hotels, learnt my skill banqueting, and yeah, fine dining banqueting. That was another totally different aspect to cooking. From there I left and went to Japan. I was working in a big central hotel, and the restaurant was a Michelin star restaurant. It was Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and I was the number 2 there, working with a team of Japanese guys and some foreigners as well. It was a totally different dynamic to what I'd done before. Whilst I was in Asia, I travelled around Asia. I have a love for Asia. I don't know what it is. Japan, the people, the culture. Travelled to South Korea, travelled to China, all around Southeast Asia. And yeah, I find the place fascinating, and it had an effect on me and how the food I like to cook, so on and so forth. Then I moved to Denmark around it was about 13 years ago, and I've been here ever since. A few sesame seeds, and this would be how you'd eat it. Funnily enough, in Korea they tend to use stainless steel chopsticks, which are a little bit more difficult to use. I don't know why, but yeah. This is some kimchi. It's, when I was a young man, it was unheard of in the country I grew up in, but now people are very aware of it and its health benefits. It's a fermented Korean chili cabbage. It's quite sour in its flavour, but it's a wonderful accompaniment to all things Korean.